If you love Amnesia and agree that it is the scariest game around, ever, stay with me, Andy, and Critical Hit for the next 15 minutes where we will explore everything you need to know about Amnesia. Development of Amnesia began while Frictional Games were still working on Penumbra Requiem. With the company working on two projects at the same time, the game had two working titles, Unknown and Lux Tenebras. It was not until November 13, 2009, with the release of the game's website and official trailer, that the game would be known as Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The final game as we know it today could have been quite different, as the developers were deeply interested in reintroducing more combat elements to the game, as used in previous titles from the company such as Penumbra Overture. However, the developers soon ran into similar issues and difficulties that plagued the combat functions in the game, and the design of the game was changed to be more similar to Overture's sequel, Penumbra Black Plague. And on the 8th of September 2010, Amnesia: The Dark Descent was finally released. The game was such a critically acclaimed hit that in 2013 it would spawn an indirect sequel in the form of Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, even making its way to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in the form of Amnesia: The Collection, which contains both Dark Descent, A Machine for Pigs, and also Amnesia: Justine. Throughout the game, you will encounter the unofficially named creatures, the Serpent Grunts. Many questions have been asked as to their origin and purpose. Why are they roaming around Brandenburg Castle and trying to kill you, the player? Though there is no official answer by Frictional Games to their origin, a note can be found in the old archives in the game which reads the following. This story reaches all the way back to the time of the 30 Years' War. It is said that soldiers who abandoned their duty got lost in the cold, dark woods and were forever damned to roam the grounds. Their bodies, wrought by their tainted souls, have left them disfigured and empty of essence. Many have sighted them over the years and described them as horrid remnants. They move silently through the woods, shying away from any beholder. They are called gatherers, as they seem to follow some ambition to steal living creatures. It is their prey which can be heard struggling inside damp burlap sacks dragged behind them, which reveal their presence. What dark scheme do they follow? What does this note mean? Well, it is told that the creatures originally were soldiers who deserted their post and got lost in the woods, most likely near the castle of Brandenburg. In the game you're going to enter this room, a wine cellar found in the southwest of the entrance hall. Once you enter the room, a flashback will appear.
What's happening? Oh, it feels like my chest is going to burst. Oh. My God! Wilhelm, do something! Accept it. We're not getting out of here. How can you say that? Alexander, you piece of shit! Let us out of here!
What's happening here is that Alexander von Brandenburg has poisoned the wine that Wilhelm and some other men drink and has locked them inside the wine cellar. If you go to the connecting room, you will find a note on the desk that is named Wilhelm's Last Words. In the letter he states that these are my final words, confession and testament. The letter begins by telling us that 2 years ago he was summoned to the castle of Brandenburg and accepted the invitation. He states that the Baron, Alexander, was friendly and offered him a position at the castle. It is stated that he was summoned of his followers in the past and not his honors he had received during his time as a soldier. Wilhelm was told that he would be kidnapping healthy humans without questions. In return, Alexander would attest to his character at the royal court, making him advance in the noble society. He states that he originally struggled with his decision, but accepted wholeheartedly. Ever since accepting, he has brought men, women and children to the castle of Brandenburg, not knowing the numbers, stating that there were many, perhaps even hundreds, none of whom were ever seen or heard from again. Then the letters proceeds to explain that Alexander has invited Wilhelm and his men down to the wine cellar to celebrate their work. This is where Alexander poisons the wine and locks them inside the wine cellar. The letter ends by saying that I feel my inside revolt against their God-given nature.
What's happening? Oh, it feels like my chest is going to burst.
Blood has begun to pour from my eyes and I can no longer, which is where the letter stops. This means that there's a chance that the gatherers are in fact Wilhelm and his men. To further this even more, the music that is played whilst reading the letter is titled Transformation in the game files. Very early on in the game you'll be entering the old archives. This is the room where you will obtain the lantern that the player will be using throughout the rest of the game. Once in the old archives and you look up, you'll be seeing a very large hole glimpsing light in. And say if you have a little too much spare time on your hands, you can find all the crates and other various objects in order to climb up to this other room, where you will be greeted by a sign saying Hallå, which means hello or hi in Swedish. This is of course a joke implemented by the developers at Frictional Games, as most of them are Swedish by origin. Upon completing the entire game, during the end screen all the way at the bottom, a line of numbers and characters are found. This number will vary depending on which ending you do at the end of the game. If you combine all these lines from the different endings, you will have a line that looks something like this. If you go into the game files and locate the readest folder of Amnesia The Dark Descent, you will find a .rar file named Super Secret File. Now, if you insert a line of characters and use them as the password you have received by completing every single ending of the game, you will now be granted the access into the folder. Inside you will find 4 folders, each containing various and unique content regarding the creating and development of the game. Folder number 1 includes art and early concept drawings of the game. Folder number 2, the design folder, is filled with early game overviews and outlines with documents showing the layout of maps of the castle. Folder number 3 contains information about the HBL engine and a Word document detailing the initial idea of the game's design and the engine. The 4th and final folder is a video folder, which contains a 4-minute video that shows how the game looked in the early stages of the development. And of course a bit more information about the overall game and comments from the developers can be found throughout all these folders. Before it later became known as Amnesia, a Machine for Pigs, it was codenamed as Game B during production. The first ever clue of an upcoming sequel to Amnesia The Dark Descent began when in 2012 Frictional Games set fans out on an elaborate scavenger hunt for clues. It all started in 2012 when Frictional Games updated their website, the next Frictional game that has previously been used to announce their first installment in 2012. The website contained a heavily blurred image where we saw the Amnesia logo and a quotation reading, "Something is emerging." The image was hyperlinked to Google Maps with the search field set as China. The website was again later updated with another blurred image and yet again hyperlinked to Google Maps with search field set as Borre. A final time the website was updated with an unblurred image this time. The image features a piece of concept art redirecting you to Google Maps with the search field set as 501st 2nd Avenue in Seattle. Fans quickly found out that the 3 hyperlinks were hinted towards the Chinese room's involvement for an upcoming yet to be named sequel to Amnesia The Dark Descent, with the first clue being the image hyperlinking us to Google Maps with China filled out in the search field. The hint Borre is a reference to Dear Esther, a previous game created by the Chinese Room, which is set on Hebridean, an island quite similar to the island Borre where the game is taking place. The final clue with the image featuring concept art hyperlinked us to the address 501st on 2nd Avenue in Seattle, where a restaurant can be found named The Chinese Room inside the Smith Tower in Seattle, USA. Even further examination of the website's source code led fans to a web page that heavily resembled a computer console with usable commands and a countdown. Once the countdown ended, a message displayed the text, "A Machine for Pigs coming 2012. The story of Amnesia begins with a man named Daniel, which is the name of the character you play as in the game. Daniel, alongside his mentor Herbert, go on an expedition to Algeria to locate artifacts for the British Museum. Whilst Daniel is exploring a cave, it collapses, trapping Daniel inside. Daniel proceeds to explore the cave and stumbles upon a mysterious relic, later named the Orb. The mysterious artifact lures Daniel closer to it, and the immense power of the Orb makes Daniel pass out upon touching it. After being trapped inside for over an hour, he is finally rescued and brought back to his senses. The encounter deeply confused Daniel as he remembers suffocating after mere minutes by approaching the orb. Daniel's items were saved and lying next to him, and among the items, a now broken orb was lying there as well. Following the expedition, Daniel returns to London and meets up with colleagues and starts bringing up questions about the orb they had obtained. Weeks after the initial encounter, Daniel begins to have waking nightmares and is no longer able to think straight. After not being able to handle it anymore, he brings his sleep problems up with his physician and reaches out to his friend, a geologist at the British Museum, about the orb, hoping to get some answers. A few days later, Daniel receives the news that both his physician and his friend are found dead. Daniel begins to question everything and starts to think that someone or something is after him and the orb. It is at this time a letter from a man named Alexander von Brennenburg invites Daniel to stay at his castle, as he states in the letter that he can help him. Not having too many options, Daniel accepts the invitation. Upon arriving at Brennenburg, Daniel is stunned by its interior, but started to notice the castle's many strange corridors, structural weaknesses, and the overwhelming darkness. Alexander proceeds to explain that it is a mysterious creature known as the Shadow that has been killing those around him, and the only way of getting rid of it is by performing various rituals with him on men, women, and children whom Alexander tells are evil. After finally realizing what he has become, a murderer, and not being able to live with the guilt and pain of his actions, Daniel drinks an amnesia potion and forgets everything, but leaves a note to himself.
God willing, the name Alexander of Brennenburg still invokes bitter anger in you. If not, this will sound horrible. Go to the inner sanctum, find Alexander, and kill him.
Which is where Amnesia, the Dark Descent, begins to unfold. Hey, so just want to add this spoiler. If you haven't already played the game, or if you're planning on after maybe seeing this video. The game is like 9 years old, so I don't feel bad. Alright, let's resume here. Let's resume with the use of flashbacks and notes you find throughout the game. Daniel learns of his true purpose for being at Brennenburg, to assist Alexander and help him return to his otherworldly home by using the power of the orb. It is not known why Alexander is on Earth to begin with, but it is known that he is in desperate need of vitae in order to stay alive. Which explains the note talking about the immortal Baron whom resides within the castle of Brennenburg. It is stated that he has lived there for generations by using vitae, an ingredient found within the adrenaline of agonized humans. In order to continuously obtain this ingredient, he has used others to kidnap innocent humans.
We took the coach, went there. Our visit was unexpected, and Alexander was able to strike Zimmerman down without alerting the others. As he went to take care of the farmhands, I began to look for the children.
And continuously tortured them until the point of death, and is able to use amnesia potions in order to continuously torturing people from their loss of memories of what has just occurred and reconstruct the fear. As Alexander is starting to age, he is often pressured into more stress and anguish, which is letting him know that his time is soon running out, and needs to find a worthy candidate to help him leave Earth and return home. This is where our protagonist Daniel enters after accepting the invitation to come to Brennenburg Castle. After reaching the final stage in the game, the orb chamber, it is stated that now Daniel has fully regained his memory. Upon finding all the pieces and reconstructing the orb, it is stolen by you from one of Alexander's servants. After escaping imprisonment, you will enter the last part, the orb chamber, where you finally will confront Alexander. Inside, you will be given multiple choices. You can either kill Alexander instead of sending Agrippa through the portal to be with Wire. Daniel is then spared by the Shadow and can leave Brennenburg knowing that he did himself justice. If Daniel chooses to let Alexander go through the portal and return home, he is killed shortly after by the Shadow. Brennenburg will collapse upon itself, sealing off all memory of anything that has occurred, allowing the deaths of hundreds of people to go without justice. Hello, and thank you so much for watching this episode of Critical Hit about Amnesia. I might need to make a part 2 in order to explain everything, as I had to leave some stuff out due to the time. So make sure to subscribe to Never Surrender. Leave down in the comments what the next episode should be about, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.